when I say the thing about the rear hip, so obviously when we like descend from our leg lift, that's where I talk about like that Velcro effect. Like you want to put pressure into the ground.
Yeah.
But like there's that fine line of like, all right, are we relying too much on like the drive leg being hammered into the ground that then causes us to initiate our rotation late? So I look at like, when you look at guys that throw with pretty good high power output, the timing of when their rear hip starts to initiate that rotation is pretty much in time with when that elbow retracts, right? So same with Ray. So it comes down, all we're doing with the drive leg is we're sticking, we're stabilizing, right?
Yep.
So this stabilizes energy and this is allowing us to produce energy. So you do this okay, you can get a little bit better with that knee position.
I'm kind of caving in a little.
Yeah, it caves in, dude, but like so do I. I do the same thing, and it's not that it's like bad, but it's just, I don't think it's the biggest piece to it,
Yeah.
right? I don't think it's the lowest hanging fruit. But so as we retract, you'll see how your elbow's starting to climb up into that retraction.
Yeah.
So you time up that rotation pretty well. But what I mean by like get it going is like as soon as you initiate it, it should be snapping.
Yeah.
It should be like, all right, we're connected to the ground. And then again, Robby Ray in regular time, right? So pelvis is almost counter-rotated, right? The trunk's like counter-rotated over the femur, over the rear hip. And then he sticks, and then as soon as it comes time to like transfer it, it snaps, right? So this is my whole deal with like the pelvis and the dynamic of snapping into rotation. So as soon as he snaps, you're gonna see the rear hip rotate, the knee's gonna cave down into the ground, elbow's gonna retract, and the front foot is actually gonna slowly rotate into front foot strike. All in unison, right? Like all those moving parts are happening. So that's when we get him into full anchor, and you can see that foot rotator into almost full rotation. We look at like a kind of a 45-degree angle, right? So then he just pulls, and that's probably right around the picture that you had.
Yeah.
So with you, and again, slow motion is tough to tell, but I think the way that your front leg and front foot operate, it's more of like this kind of slowly initiation of rotation.
Yeah, so like here's like when I was at working with Mike Adams, we were working on that.
Is that a mustache?
No, it's goatee. I'm sitting here,
Yeah.
and snap.
Yeah. And I've realized that it's a really hard move to accomplish with our slots. And I've realized that over time, because obviously if you're a lower slot guy, you're able to generate more rotational energy rather than like when you're, so you're gonna get into a lot more trunk flexion as you go over the top. But I just think like that's the biggest piece is like, can we come down, stabilize, stick, maybe thinking, you know, brief hold or whatever that cue may be, and then like snapping that as you go into your rotation.
You also think that's also a cause of like how my back foot kind of like spins off this way as like, so like watch my back foot, like you see how like it's going to spin.
Yeah. I would say start there.
So like preset, it's almost
I would
like,
always.
So if this is the rubber, preset my foot this way.
I would always tell guys that do this anyways to preset it there, just because the compensation effect.
Okay,
right.
So like, that's another thing that when I was working with Mike, he told me the same thing. So if I go back to,
and I think you're a lot actually better now, right now with your delivery.
Yeah. So like, this is in the off season. He had me preset my foot.
Yeah.
And then I'll go. I'll kind of cave in, but my heel would pop up. My heel was always popping up.
See, I don't, but that's the thing, dude. Like, I think that's another misconception as far as like heel popping up or heel disconnection and everything. Like, maybe that's a great cue for some guys, but at the same time, like, what's probably the most important piece to the delivery?
Because like, this is near a full foot strike.
Yeah, and it's creating a lot of rotational energy.
Yeah.
Right? But like this move here is elite, right?
Yeah.
From here to here. And then as soon as he comes through, now everything is just kind of like, honestly, at this point, it's just kind of a byproduct now. Because everything just gets pulled through, right?
Yeah.
And he goes and gets it. And you do that pretty well. And then the one thing I actually wanted to say, what?
My post up there.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say was that there's a little like kind of not clearing your hip type dynamic going on.
Leaking into the front leg.
So it's that, but like as soon as you come down to your positioning of your front leg, I don't think it's in that optimal position, but at the same time, this is a tough camera angle. Like open side would tell us a lot more, but as soon as you kind of come into this rotation, it's kind of going against the front
Very
instead
true.
of like having the front be
Banging.
positioned and then send force in the opposite direction.
Yes.
And which is the kinematic sequence of having that come up.
And then rotating.
Whereas with you, I think, you know, something about that positioning of it, it's not allowing you to fully like block all of forward acceleration, right? But you do a good job with the glove side. I think you can get more flexion of your trunk. So like this is the dynamic of,
It's like these completely tilted this way.
right, so
Like here.
so neutral, 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 okay, trunk, neutral, 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 boom, we anchor down, and now remember where our target is. So theoretically, again, I think this more so depends on the actual arm action, but if we're over the top or even high 3/4, the goal now is that the rotational energy aspect is essentially like completed.
Okay.
And now we need to take all that rotational energy and direct it towards our desired target, forward. So then it becomes this task of taking rotational energy, directing it linear. And that's by way of, in my opinion, positioning the lead leg accordingly and taking your trunk into your glove side.
Okay.
And getting more, like if you watch Keist, like unreal at this.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas I think you, again, tough camera angle, but like with you, your trunk is kind of coming through and it's
Spinning around.
still rotating.
So I'll show you a perfect video. So the first time I went to that place that Mike owned, my problem was I was spinning off of everything. I gotta find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like right here, perfect. So I'll slow it down. And like my direction is spinning off.
Well, your lead, so this is another good, that's a good camera angle for that. Your lead leg is dominant. And this could be why your back leg is collapsing. The lead leg is only the brake pedal.
Yeah.
The drive leg is the gas pedal. So typically guys that have a cave-in or something like that is when their lead leg gets super aggressive and tries to unauthentically gain extension.
So like perfect example. So for me, you know, like I'm a guy who goes
Yeah, yeah.
really rotating.
Yeah.
There's times where I'll get too high.
Yeah.
And that's when I start slamming.
So it's gonna pull you, right?
Yeah.
So it's like an unauthentic load. So if your lead leg gets aggressive into your front foot strike, then your drive leg has no other ability rather than falling,
Yeah.
right? And then when you do that, you're gonna be kind of mispositioned as well.
And then that's gonna cause a timing issue.
And it's gonna cause, if you're super aggressive with this guy coming this way, it's gonna cause the rest of your body to go this way.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas like, again, Ray, his lead leg is a byproduct of his drive leg. So his drive leg is his gas pedal, it's his throttle. He's allowing that to dictate his acceleration and his direction, everything else, and his lead leg is just kind of hanging out. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, that's all the hip capacity that we have. I guess we'll anchor down here, and then boom. And now you're positioned accordingly to then send all that back.
Yeah.
It's almost like super simplistic, but at the same time, super overcomplicated,
Yes.
right? And another guy that does this really well is Bueller. So you watch Bueller, peak leg lift, comes down.
Really just to,
Yeah, so the drive leg is his main source of acceleration of his body.
Yep.
And his lead leg is just kind of hanging out.
It's relaxed basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like a relaxed, like kind of like the front side.
Yeah.
Right, where it's like this relaxed type of extension. You know, you think about extension with the knee, whatever. And then it's just a byproduct of where that drive leg and where his hip capacity allows him to get to in his extension. Right? And then boom, you position, and then you pull the trunk through linear. Pull the trunk through linear, and you change your, essentially like your energy, creating rotation, 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 and then boom, we snap rotation, we snap the band, and then direct it towards the catcher.
So basically, I should like in a sense thinking like my front side's almost in a sense paralyzed, like basically can't do anything with it, and last second boom.
And then I think about like, so this is what I was talking about. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with what I changed in my delivery. Because I just feel naturally, like it's easier for me to feel that movement if I come down and I'm like kind of parallel.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I see
So
you go
yeah,
up,
I
down,
come down and then like almost like pause. And I don't,
like almost like Kershaw.
yeah, kind of. You know, David Price, I think, is
A better one, yes.
1-1. But I think it just gives me a better sense of like sensory input to feel like, okay, now I'm here. Now let my drive leg go,
Yeah.
right? Instead of like where I used to come down, I'd go here and then I'd take my lead leg out.
And extend.
And it would already, if you think about like there's a rope, you know, attached to the two knees. And like if your lead leg kind of goes out here, it's going to just naturally pull your knee in that direction.
Yes.
And I think with that foot positioning, like a little bit of tilt right here, or whatever counter rotation, whatever you want to call that, is only going to help your alignment of like your pelvis.
Yes.
Especially if you're a guy that's kind of slowly rotating your hips.
Okay.
Right? Yep. Another piece to that though could be like the general direction. So usually like guys that have that foot rotation probably need to go to the arm side of the rubber.
So like I should be first base. Or should I stay third base?
Third base.
I'm third base.
Like far, so this is what I was doing my last
far
outing.
on the third base.
I went far first base because like I naturally go foot rotation, and if you look, like my knee is then linear to where it is at like that time in which I come down front foot strike.
Yeah.
Instead of if I was over here and then I was kind of cutting myself off, then my lead leg would be positioned terribly, and then I would probably
have that step across type of.
So I think the lead leg is a byproduct of what's happening back here.
Okay.
Right? And when I said like you gotta get going into rotation, like get this thing to a point where it's so much like into rotation that you already clear your hips when you land.
Yes.
Same thing that I was telling him, right? Like get to a point in which like you cap out the amount of rotation, almost thinking that. Obviously it's not gonna happen because you're not gonna go.
Then you're gonna be really early trunk, your arm's gonna be really early.
But if you can think about like, okay, I think your arm action's good enough. It's good. It's good to the point where like it's your delay mechanism for your trunk. So I don't think your trunk's gonna go drastically early.
It's all because of the byproduct.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I think the first piece to it is like establishing a sense of like, okay, this is what we want. All right. So like preset throw variations where your hips are into rotation and you're clearing your hips at the time in which your front foot comes to the ground. Okay. And then you just keep this neutral and then do your throws. And then with that whole like lead leg dynamic, do some throw variations where you're crossing over with your lead leg and then allowing your drive leg to accelerate you.
Okay.
Right? Yep. So like even where you're just here, you kind of tilt your pelvis here, you lead with either that butt or that heel, and then you just sink. As you sink, you're hinging, and then you just go throw. And then everything's a byproduct of that.
Yeah, so that's the one drill Adams gave me was like getting here and then just go forward.
Yeah.
And like another one I do is like, they call it like a step behind where I train. But like they want us to go here and go.
Yeah.
But like guys who can't get that like movement, they still reset this way and then go.
I would give you like you ever do like step backs?
Yeah, step back.
So a step back into rotation. Do you have a pliable? So like little bit more athleticism required. So if you're gonna do a step back, you're like this, right? But the goal for you is to have, same with you, have that hip into rotation. So you'd go like step back into rotation.
Like a reverse rolling, in a sense.
Sure.
Because think about it in a rolling.
Yeah. I like my name better, but you can try to change the name of another drill, maybe.
Yeah.
So as soon as you come down, boom, now you position and lock that rear hip into rotation. Now the goal is to take this and just lift it and allow wherever it goes to be just a byproduct, you know?
Yeah,
so you boom and then lift, throw.
So I'll be like this, I'll be here.
Yeah. And then you just feel that snap. Yeah.
I feel here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is like, obviously you got to be coordinated to where like I've given this to kids who kind of like go here and then like, just like, you know, whatever. But like the goal is to feel a sense of like locking that rear hip, like in that posture.
Yeah.
And then just allowing that kind of segmentation of those two, just pull your arm through.
Got it.
Right? And so it's boom, and just pull your arm through. And then once...
God damn.
And I'm such a firm believer in like, to make mechanical adjustments, you have to like train the movement. Like you have to teach the body. Yeah, like you have to teach the body like, okay, this is what we want to do. Now we're going to do 1,000 reps of it to just instill this motor pattern, right? Like it doesn't happen.
I could just dry rep it without even a ball too, just to just kind of like get myself going here.
I think that, and even like when you talk about like that whole like drive leg and lead leg thing, like that's such a dry rep thing. Like I'll do this in the grocery store, just like, ooh, yeah, you know, like you feel like that loading.
No, but that's what I was doing. Like when I was in my freaking brace with Tommy John, I was sitting on a mound, just feeling the hinge, like getting used to all that stuff. Because I was such a push guy before surgery, and like everyone's like, dude, sit into the hip. Here
I think, but like I said in that video, I think you're a lot better where you're at now, because like I did see that like in the last 2 outings where like you do a lot better job of snapping it. Like it's like a band, and you snap that.
As opposed to this.
And as opposed to like this perception of power, where you think like, you know, extension. Yeah. When now it's like we're trying to do this.
Yep.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense for you? Can you take that too?
Yeah. So much sports.
Sports. Content.
So much sports.